Now on Sky News Business, Your Property Empire.
Hello and welcome to Your Property Empire. I'm Chris Gray. CoreLogic has rolled out a new report examining leadership in the real estate industry and what makes a good agent. It shows that a new breed of agency is emerging where principals are educated, business savvy and focused on their teams. So what does that mean for the buyers and sellers of property, and why would you care? Well, joining us tonight is Kylie Davis, Head of Content and Product Marketing at CoreLogic, and Charles Tarbey, Chairman and Owner of Century 21 Australasia. Good to have you both on the show. So how good is leadership within the property industry?
So it's not too bad, Chris. We see that 66% of real estate agents feel that they're being well or excellently led, but that still leaves a third of the industry that feel that there needs to be some improvement.
And what about your thoughts, Charles?
A third of the industry? Well, I think we all need improvement all the time. I think it's been a changing process over the years since I started in the industry 45 years ago. People have predominantly migrated from being salespeople to business owners, so they never got that skill, business skill all the way through, and so they found themselves trying to manage real estate agencies even though they were salespeople at heart. And I think that's the thing that's changed the most, is we're watching a lot of people going more training, more understanding of their numbers, their business numbers, rather than just their sales numbers.
Yeah. Now, CoreLogic is typically more interested in, I guess, the property values and the changing property values. You're now getting into talking more around this kind of stuff. Do you find the information surprising, what you're discovering?
I think we find that it backs up what we're seeing in the property market itself. So the market's rising, and we see that real estate agents have the ability to rise with the market. But I guess when things turn around, what we're really curious to know is what's going to make real estate agents future-proof. And so, and with disruption coming, what are the skills that they need to make sure that their businesses thrive even when the market isn't quite so strong?
Now, Charles, you quite often, I've noticed, don't talk about real estate agents, you talk about real estate practitioners. And I know when the market changes, you say this is when the agents really come in.
Yes, yes.
So do you want to explain that a bit more to the viewers?
Yeah, we notice that when the industry, when there's a boom on, that a lot of people see the industry as being easy. We've talked about that before, and they see all the shiny Facebook posts of new cars and etc. And they go, oh gee, I'm going to get into that. Looks like there's money in that industry. And they come along, and it looks relatively easy, because if you list a property for sale, you often just put up a sign and it sells. But we come back into that marketplace now where training is absolutely critical, and the real estate practitioners that have been part of the industry for a long period of time recognise that negotiating a transaction or presenting a property for sale or sitting down with people at a property listing presentation and explaining to them the processes becomes a very large part of their training, whereas before it was, I got a listing, now I'll just throw a few signs up. And I think that you're noticing that those people that have been in the industry for a while, and those that did train themselves in the last 5 years, because a lot didn't, they're the ones that are probably going to struggle through this next process. Yeah,
and there's certainly a change in time. So from a CoreLogic perspective, why do you see that good leadership is important within real estate agency?
Because I think with the challenges of the future in the real estate market, with players like Purple Bricks coming in, we really need to establish what the value of a real estate agent is, and CoreLogic believes that real estate agents are highly valuable. What we want to be able to understand, therefore, is what value are they adding, and what we're seeing is that it's, as Charles was saying, it's not just about listing a property on the market and sticking up a signboard and sticking it on a portal. It's actually about what the business that's running behind that is like, and the teamwork that's happening, and then how successful and healthy that business is, and how they're articulating their value to buyers and sellers. So what is the value that a real estate agent adds to a buyer or seller? Well, it's someone who's an expert who is able to provide advice and support and coach you through the selling process or the buying process, and really help match you to the right property and get you a better result than just doing it yourself.
And Charles, probably a good indication of this is real estate agents' wages, because a lot of people think that a lot of agents are overpaid and they do little for their money. But what is the average wage, and just as a rough idea for an agent?
There's a small number that earn a significant amount, and that's what people see. A lot of people don't earn much more than the $40,000 to $45,000 a year, which is a base salary in most parts of the country. So it's a pretty tough role to work the hours you work, and as we've mentioned before, being with other people's families late at night when you should be with your own.
So, Kylie, what do the agents that are leading actually do?
Well, what we see is that the agents who are really great at leading are better at running businesses behind their business. So principals who are spending all of their time competing with their, what are they called? Sales principals. They're often just competing with other agents in their group, and they're not taking the time to really work with their team and have the right processes and background set up inside their businesses to run them run them efficiently and in a really strong way. So what real estate agents need to be doing is thinking about being a principal as the next career move after being a really great sales agent, and looking at how you build a business of amazing sales agents and property managers that's highly profitable and that adds great value and that has a really good service mentality.
We do get quite a few viewers that are real estate agents or want to get into real estate. They're investors, they want to leave the rat race and get in there. And I guess when you come to some of the main capital cities, your biggest competition can be actually in your own agency if you're one of these leading agents.
Yeah, very much so. And the advice I give to people when they're looking at becoming a real estate practitioner is to find the right company to work for first. That's first and foremost, not trying to get a job. And I also advise them to ring a few of the agents that work in those offices and ask them what it's like to work there. You really get a very different view. It's the same as when I say to people, don't go for the most active agent with the most for sale signs and the most posts on Facebook. Go to the agent with the most number of sold signs. And that's really what they need to do, is to really focus back down in that
because
deeply.
it's very easy to basically buy the listing, which effectively means $1 million property is tell the vendors, I can get you 1.2.
Yeah, you go and list your home with an agent that's got more for sale signs than anybody else. You're just putting your home for sale with a whole bunch of people who haven't sold. So, it's really important to work with the agents that have got the results, not activity-driven, performance-based.
And so what type of leadership are you generally, or types of styles of leadership are you finding?
So what we find is that the dominant style and the most common style of real estate leadership is one called affiliative. So someone who is really worried and caring about their team and making sure that the environment that their team's working in is getting the best results and bringing everyone together to achieve a common outcome. And that's different to like a coaching style where you might be just really one-on-one, or a coercive style which is a bit more sort of military, and it's, do as I say, don't do as I do.
Charles, I'm not sure how many different branches you've got, because I think especially every foreign country I go to, even if it's somewhere pretty exotic, there's always a Century 21 sign up there.
There are plenty of them around, yes.
How different are the styles even within a particular agency, and does a city's leadership style maybe differ to a country leadership style?
They do. There's a lot of countries that do work the same, but there's a lot of commission-only driven countries around the world, so you don't get anything. You're in, you work, and you might be a part-time agent, you might be a stay-at-home mum, you might even be a taxi driver. I mean, it's not silly. If you're a real estate agent in New York where you catch cabs everywhere and you've got a client with you, you don't talk about real estate, because invariably the driver has got an agent's licence as well. So it's not as structured. Australia is probably the most structured real estate country in the world. Because we've had to pay salaries for a long period of time, they're not just brand-driven businesses, they're business format operations, and a lot of agents are getting better and better at it. And the worst mistake a real estate agent can make, the owner of business, is to engage the team in their overall objectives for the year or for their 5-year plan. Most real estate practitioners are interested in what they can do today, this week, this month. And we always say to agents, create short-term objectives in a quality environment, because short-term objectives will keep the agents engaged and moving along.
And just as a final thing before the break, how can they improve if they're not doing it that well?
I think you need to have a look at how your business is operating, and the first example of your business not being as successful is what's it doing financially, and then look at your culture, look at your processes, and look at how you're engaging your people.
Wonderful, sounds good. Now, Charles, let's have a look at the numbers.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
The clearance rates.
Yeah, very interesting this week. 65.4% was the national clearance rate, 74.4% this time last year, so it's certainly a massive decline. And Sydney's numbers are going to get even tighter as the week goes on, but they did come in at 61.5, and they had 1,035 auctions. But Melbourne, which has been in the 70s and as high as the early 80s, has also changed. That was 69.6% this last week, but they had 1,717 auctions. Really interesting.
Catching up after Melbourne Cup.
The catch-up, big catch-up. And I think that one of the most interesting things for me was watching the fact that Perth, Adelaide and Brisbane were the only 3 capital cities that performed better this week than they did this time last year. So interesting places to watch.
And quite often do you find, because Sydney and Melbourne's been in the news all the time as being top performing, is that as those kind of cool off, then it goes to the other states?
It seems to, and I think the other states have been in the shadows for a long time, and they've been like Perth in the doldrums for some time. So there's going to be a time when that changes, and picking that time is really the most difficult part.
The viewers that complain that we never talk about their states, their time will come over the next 12 months.
Their time will come. Tasmania had a good clearance rate, and it didn't have more than one property this time. It had quite a good number. So there's a lot of movement in other capital cities right now.
Okay, and what about homes advertised for sale?
Yeah, they're up again week after week after week now, and that's probably an indication of those clearance rates being so low. So it was a 0.65% up this time over last week, and you've noticed over the last few weeks, in some weeks has been quite significant in terms of stock climbs. So that's a good number.
Because that graph is looking pretty good there.
It is. It's like Mount Everest.
It's going up.
The other one that we're going to talk about looks like Mount Everest as well,
So
which is the rent price, but it's flattened out this week, only modestly, because the place that had the biggest climb is the one that had a couple of weeks ago had 2.03% climb in rents, and it went backwards 1.08. This week it's back up again, and that's Hobart, and that came in at 2.67%. So that was really good. But Darwin's been negative for a while, and they had a negative week of 1.12. Melbourne and Brisbane, they were up 0.23 and 0.2. So most of the capital cities are looking okay.
And then finally the vacancy rates.
Melbourne. Now, Melbourne has been the winner for week after week after week, got beaten this week. So Melbourne came in at 0.89%, Sydney at 0.81%. So there you go, vacancy rate. Perth used to be up in the 10s, was starting to drop down, has dropped down to 7.05% this week, based on the stats I've got out of my offices there. So that's a really good call for Perth, 2.92% average over those three capital cities. So we've been saying watch Perth market very closely, because I think that's an interesting one.
Now, I know CoreLogic has got millions and millions of bits of data around property. You almost need a Charles Tarbey there, because he does it all off by heart.
I was very impressed.
It's absolutely amazing. Database.
Thank you.
Database in the head. Very well done, Charles. Before we run to the break, I guess, why do we need leadership practices in real estate to actually improve?
Well, because I think we need I think we want to improve the profile of real estate agents. And the reputation of real estate agents.
They're not all as great as Charles Tarbey.
They're not all as great as Mr. Tarbey.
God, here we go.
We want people to see value in using a real estate agent, and we really want that value proposition to be understood, that a real estate agent is someone like a lawyer or an accountant or even a doctor. You don't want to see them all the time, but when you need them, you want someone that you can trust to go to give you really great advice, and you want to have that trusted relationship with someone.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff, Kelly.
And Charles, do you find that there's a big difference between obviously the big real estate chains versus, I guess, people going out as independent just in their own name?
I really think it does come down to the individual. Like I like to think that people call a brand, and they do if they know it and they know they can trust it, but they end up listing their home with a person. So you could send out all sorts of people with the same presentation, and they'll all do it differently. So I do think it comes down to the individual. People need to know that there's something backing that individual, and this is where I think the brands and the organisations with training, etc., and so on, really come to the surface when it's that.
And we do see the data supporting that. So we do see that the quality of leadership inside the franchises is often better than the independents, or it's really skewed. And we put when we look at why that is, it's because of the structure and the processes that exist to support principles that are quite sort of is structured rather than sort of the out of the box, you could do it any way you want.
Yeah,
and certainly I found a lot of the country agents, there's not much training there, so they've got to come into the big Spain to go and do it. Anyway, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.
Now we're going to take a short break. We'll be back soon. You're watching Your Property Empire.